Welcome back to part 2 of our Week 1 History of Asia lecture video. We're focused on what we will call Monsoon Asia, what the textbook refers to as Monsoon Asia, because of the geographic, climatic, agricultural, and cultural similarities shared between the societies that comprise Monsoon Asia. By Monsoon Asia, we mean essentially China, India, and their neighbors, those societies that are on the periphery of China and India and have been influenced by them. And this is the part of Asia that has been most fundamentally affected by the monsoon. To define the monsoon is a weather system. It's the largest weather system in the world. And it's a series of storms that hit the Indian subcontinent and then Southeastern Asia and move northeast, that supply the Asian continent with massive amounts of rain. And this wetness, is essential to the cultivation of a number of crop species that allow for very, 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 very dense populations. So we're looking at high yield crops like rice in particular. In fact, if you look at the supplemental videos, there's a video on the monsoon and its contemporary economic effects, because it's just as vital for this part of the world as it was in antiquity. And there's also a video on detrimental effects of the monsoon as well. So this weather pattern is critical to life in all of these societies, due to the fact that without the monsoon, large portions of this part of the world would be arid. Rice agriculture, in fact, is the dominant factor in linking both China and India together and their peripheries together into this unit of Monsoon Asia. Rice agriculture is significant. You can see here the picture of the Indian farmer with the Chinese farmer next to him. Rice cultivation demands a great deal of water. Rice is raised in plots called paddies, and the rice has to be wet, it has to be underwater. Its roots have to be underwater for it to sprout. So this is a very water-intensive crop, but conversely, it has very high yields, so it can support a very, very large population. And deep in antiquity, this meant that these two civilizations, ancient Chinese and ancient Indian civilizations, would grow exponentially in terms of population, leading to their cultural significance and to technological development, economic development, etc. But rice isn't just water intensive, it's also labor intensive. Those monsoons, for example, that bring all of the water into Monsoon Asia can also wreak havoc. They can cause flooding of rivers. They can cause disasters, human disasters of epic proportions. And if you'll look in one of the videos, the supplemental videos that are optional, all those are completely optional. If you look at one of those, you'll see that the floods can be very, very, very devastating. And this has traditionally been the case in both India and China. And we're talking about floods that have killed hundreds of thousands of people, even in antiquity, given how high populations were. In fact, one of the major floods of the Yellow River in China is estimated to have killed over 1 million people. And this is during the Han Dynasty. Of course, there's much more going on than flooding. There's the fact that rice agriculture is also extremely labor intensive, meaning that the people who are growing these crops have to spend hours and hours every day in very, very difficult conditions. Imagine walking around in all of that muck, often with your bare feet, and you're talking about farmers in antiquity, in an attempt to produce adequate yields for your family and to have enough to trade for surplus. And of course, these patties were difficult to maintain. In a lot of instances, they had to be erected in terrace form, meaning going up a hill, carving out flat portions of a hill as you go up in order to have the kind of adequate water coverage necessary to grow the crop. And irrigation systems had to be maintained. And these were very difficult to dig and to maintain. So a very, very powerful government emerged in these areas where rice agriculture was developing. Governments in monsoon Asia tended towards greater centralization, meaning less freedom for individual city-states, individual tiny kingdoms, and there's a greater attempt to try to bring them under a more powerful whole, and also towards more authoritarian power structures. Maintaining the infrastructure of rice agriculture was very, very difficult for ancient societies. You had to be able to force people in many instances to dig the irrigation canals, to dig the trenches, to build the terraces, to do the work that was necessary to maintain enough of a yield to feed everyone and then have some surplus. But it goes beyond government. The general cultural expectations in monsoon Asia are towards collectivism rather than individualism. In the West, particularly as you move through Southwestern Asia into Europe, there develops an emphasis on individualism, this idea of the individual as the autonomous unit of society. And from this concept of individualism, you have individual rights, law that deals with the individual. This wasn't the case in monsoon Asia. The emphasis was on collectivism because, again, this rice agricultural system demanded a collectivist approach. Everyone had to work together and do their part, and variation or individual nonconformity could jeopardize the entire population. For example, even today there's a proverb in Japan that's taught to children in kindergarten. The nail that sticks up must be hammered down. This means that you cannot be a nonconformist, that it's detrimental to other people, that it's selfish for you to attempt to remain outside the norm. One interesting example of this is the behavior of heroes. We have on the right an image of Beowulf, the great Anglo-Saxon hero, slaying the dragon. And on the left, we have the three sworn brothers, three of the greatest heroes of Chinese history. And you can see how one is an individual, the other is a unit. And if you look at the supplemental videos that I included on Beowulf and then on the scene from the film The Battle of Red Cliffs, you'll see how the emphasis is on, even with heroes fight as a unit, as a collective in monsoon Asia. Whereas in European, Greek, Roman, French, British, etc., there's an emphasis on the individual man of greatness, right? And it's a profoundly different outlook. In monsoon Asia, there's an outlook that emphasizes a unity in society that isn't present in Western societies, where individual autonomy is considered to be much, much, much more important. Nowhere was this collectivist approach more emphasized than in family life. And if we take a look here at an image on the left of an Indian family, extended family in what's now Mumbai. In the 19th century, it was called Bombay. Picture was taken in the 1890s. And this picture of an aristocratic Chinese family from the early 20th century, the turn of the 20th century, we can see that this concept of family, it was expansive. It included multiple adult males, their children, their wives, in kind of an extended clan network. If you look at images from the United States, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, from the same time period, you'll see an emphasis on nuclear families. Man, woman, children. Sometimes there will be a grandparent or grandparents, but usually it's one married couple with their children that comprises the family photo. And this is a very, very, very different mentality. This is a mentality that not only promotes collective thinking socially, but within the family. The individual is encouraged to subordinate their own individual desires, their own individual needs to that of the good of the whole, the good of the clan. And you can even see this today in terms of marriage practices. In particular in India, where you still have a strong matchmaking industry of professional matchmakers who help provide arranged marriages. And this is something that exists even among people who are professionals, wealthy professionals, well-educated, consummate educations, etc. This is a part of that cultural tradition that is still surviving.